Welcome, everyone. I know this weather in this room is not quite like it is outside, so please stay warm. Hopefully it'll get warmer as we go here and people start really thinking. My name is Carmen Logue, and I'm a product manager on the database platform team. And I am interested in all things reporting and business intelligence. So one of my focuses is the product InterSystems IRIS Business Intelligence. And that's what you're hopefully here to learn about today.
All right, my name is Asaf Sinay, and I manage a super talented team of developer support engineers. And I'm also the subject matter expert for analytics at InterSystems, and pretty excited to share with you some tips and tricks.
Yeah, and I should say I asked Asaf to do this session because he's had probably a decade of experience, right, with InterSystems IRIS Business Intelligence, both as the support manager as well as essentially a customer himself with an internal system. And my main job here is to make sure that he finishes on time. So that's what I'm going to be focused on.
So welcome, everyone. We have a pretty impressive list of, if you haven't joined the Slido yet, please do it now. We have another question coming, and also please feel free to use it for Q&A. You can add Q&A. If somebody asks your question, you can add thumbs up, and we're gonna get to it at the end of the session. Still there, so you can still scan it. So my team and I worked with many customers, some of you I recognize in the room, to create basically enterprise grade and level of business intelligence. And it's going to be hard to compress years of experience to a 30, 40-minute session, but we're going to do our best and hopefully choose scenarios. We're going to set up the scenarios in the next slide, and hopefully it will you'll be able to relate to some of them and learn. And yes, as some of the goals, we want to make you successful. We want you to be able to impress your boss, get things done faster, and be happier. So, all right. So there are three kind of different scenarios here. Getting started with IRIS BI. I want to make my cube build more efficient, and I want to use existing information to increase adoption of my analytics solution, my IRIS BI solution. So please take the time just to, it's a multi-select, so you can kind of select a few of them. This stage is making me a little dizzy because it's moving, so we might explore the floor pretty soon. Or I should stop moving, breathing. Yeah. All right. So
it looks like a lot of people want to hear about getting started. Oh, this one.
Is this one live?
Which one's live? This one? All of them are live. Oh,
surround.
Exciting. Yeah. Yeah, so it looks like there's a lot of people interested in getting started with IRIS BI, which is great because that's the first topic that we actually have. We're going to talk about all three of these, but we thought we'd do a little polling just to see if there are any that we should spend more time on than the others. So, yeah. And as Asaf said, feel free to put additional questions in that Slido. We'll have time for that at the end.
Great. All right, so when we talk about getting started with IRIS BI, it can mean a few things, right? Because it might be for you. You've never done anything with IRIS BI and you want to get started, or maybe you want to onboard a new colleague or your customers, and some of the things you need to kind of think about before even starting is like, what is the problem? What is the business case I'm trying to actually solve? And then it's important to understand your role in the project. Are you, and how many hats you're gonna wear? Are you gonna be the consumer? Are you gonna create the model? Are you gonna create the dashboard? You have a pretty artistic. What are your skills? You know, can you differentiate 20 colors and kind of make a beautiful animated dashboard, or maybe you really like data and kind of maybe data quality and things like that. So, so Gartner actually have a maturity kind of model that they build, and I just put it out there for you to see that there are a lot of different levels organizations can have in terms of maturity for business intelligence. So you have five different levels. So for you guys, for now, it's important, I think, to try and see where your organization is at right now, and more importantly, where do you want to be? And as you can see, you know, it will take some work and transformation sometimes in different organizations to work with data and kind of you know, get to the next level in terms of using the data you already have. So I wanted to start with some of the resources that we put out there for you. So Learning Services has created a few introduction, bless you, few introduction videos that you can sign up for free, learning.intersystems.com, and choose the analytics-related learning path. This one is actually for people that have never done anything with business intelligence. So it talks about kind of the terminology and introductions to business intelligence or cubes and things like that. So that's a great start for people who've never done anything with business intelligence. And the next one is kind of about IRIS BI Analyzer, which is kind of the playground. Somebody created a model for you, linked the data, the underneath data, gave it like good names we can all understand. And this is where you can actually drag and drop, and you can slice and dice and filter. And this video actually covers, and you know, to be honest, the UI or some of the features we have were created to make things better, but some of them are kind of not the standard or not super intuitive. So this kind of covers some of the basics of using with Analyzer. So if you have somebody that you want to onboard, that's an easy sell to spend 7 minutes and do better. Some of the things going to be covered is kind of let's have the same terminology. This is the model content, for example. So as you can see, this is all the measures and dimensions you have access to that somebody already created for you. This is the pivot builder. This is where you drag and drop things to, or you have all sorts of options to organize the data. And then this is where you're going to see your pivot preview. Did it start? Yes, it did start. So this is kind of a short. It's not covered necessarily in the video, but it's to cover how filters work. So it shows you can drag it all the way to the right or to the bar, to the separating bar. It shows you how to search data, how to actually add data after you search, how to search for multiple values, how to clear it out, for example. So those are the things that I've seen people, you know, first time kind of struggle with, and once they know and they're comfortable enough to play with it, you know, it's definitely.
I was curious, how many people have actually used the analyzer? Do we have? Okay, so you guys are familiar. A good portion of you are familiar with what it is, but it's a great place to kind of evaluate your data, look at what's there, figure out what's performant, what's not, and you know, to kind of work with it from there. So I just wanted to jump in on that. It's a great place to do that before you try doing any kind of visualization.
Right, and in terms of filters, as long as when you add more filters, this is by default an end. So if I have the age bucket and age, I cannot necessarily OR them. If you want to OR them, you go to advanced filters. So this is the little gear on the filters section, and it lets you add kind of the logic. You can add branches, you can have and, or, you can have values, you can have different things. So that's the advanced filter. Another thing I tried to put together is kind of the different icons you might see in the model content. So you have things that you define in your cube. Other things you can define in Analyzer. So this is, for example, the calculated count that is the flask and in the blue. And then there are different behavior. If you double click on them, what happens? So for a beginner user, they might get confused, but if you know exactly what it does, you can actually take advantage of it and kind of review your model more quickly. So this is just a list of that. If you've used Analyzer before, it's mostly GUI. You drag and drop things. But one of the great things about it, we do all the plumbing, we create all the MDX queries for you. And if you click on that scroll icon, you'll be able to see the MDX query at the top. In this case, I was using detailed listings, so basically highlight a specific cell or a group of cells, and I wanted to see what's the data underneath it. I see 20 patients in that cell, but I want to actually see more details about that. So the detailed listing is going to help you see that. And if you click the model content icon on a listing, you're going to see at the bottom the actual SQL query we generate for you underneath to be able to retrieve that information. Another kind of a pretty powerful analyzer thing is the drill down spec. So in your cube, you can define hierarchies that you can basically double click and get to a drill down, right? This is kind of a fancy trick to, you can see where you define that in the rows, and you have the drill down options. You click plus, and it shows you your model. And then you can put what happens when people double click on any member in your analyzer. It will actually follow that and go directly to that drill down to that member. So if we look at the MDX query, you're going to see that we basically apply a filter on whatever member you clicked. So instead of defining a real hierarchy and having a structure underneath in the cube, you can quickly do that. So after seeing most of that, I think it's time to take action, huh?
Yeah. Thanks, Asaf. So just to kind of wrap that section.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. We can do this together.
Sure.
Just to wrap that section up about taking action, and I think as Asaf started out, it depends if you're taking action for yourself, you're trying to learn, or you've built something for your organization and now you want to kind of roll it out to others in the organization. So one is for yourself, skill up. We have, as Asaf showed you, the online resources that are available and learning paths. We also have a 5-day classroom training class, which is if you're going to be the primary person working on InterSystems IRIS BI, we really encourage you to do that 5-day class. I know it's a commitment, but it's worth it. It takes you kind of whole top to bottom of the whole product, so it really, you get into some detail about that. And I know our education team can do it on site, or you can come to our beautiful offices in Cambridge. And then the second segment of things is about onboarding your customers, and this is, I think, equally important because you're gonna roll this out to your organization. What we've seen some customers do, which is pretty effective, is to create just a very short video that goes out with it and says, this is what I'm trying to solve with this, either this dashboard, or if it's rolling out Analyzer with this, I'm trying to give you this information, here's the measures, here's the dimensions, and then a couple of tips about what they can do in terms of filtering and that kind of thing. And it just goes, I think, a long way to really rolling something out that people can understand and can work with. So, and then as part of that, you can also give them, some links to other references that we have on the InterSystems site, so if they want to learn more about that, and really get people started with a few good examples.
Thank you. Another thing that it keeps growing is the IPM. It used to be ZPM. It's the InterSystems Package Manager, and the developer community and Open Exchange. So this is basically a marketplace for either technology samples or actual applications that you can easily deploy and download and kind of integrate to your system. And for example, there is the Samples BI that you can easily get from GitHub and Open Exchange and start working with data just to be more familiar with the tools. There is Analyze This, for example, that takes CSV or a table or an SQL query and actually creates a model for you. And not only that, it creates, analyzes the data and creates some pivot tables and a sample dashboard for you. So you can actually visualize your data, and also if you're working with your own data, we saw that people are more attached to that example, and actually it makes more sense for them, and they're more likely to use it. So those are links. You'll be able to see it in the presentation as well. And there are a lot of examples there how to create your own template. So again, you take your model. We have all the building blocks to expose it to your customers. So right now, this is the Open Exchange. If you kind of filter by analytics, at least last week, we had 52 applications that you could just use for free and play with that. So I encourage you to do that. The second scenario is making my queue build more efficient. So for example, we have the patient's cube. It has it basically somebody created that, and we're building it, and basically it has 2 million patients, and it takes 173 seconds. So Carmen, I think the patient queue build is too slow.
Okay, well, I guess now you're going to have to define too slow, right? Because it is kind of relative. And this is, I think, something important that to think about is, and you can see here we've got an example of 2 different cars. Now, you might have different expectations depending on which kind of car you're going to drive. I don't know. I can totally see some of you in that little pink thing. And then, same thing, what is too slow? And there tends to be, this is something I think that needs to be discussed, is what are the requirements really, right? And there is often a trade-off between making something faster and making something very huge, right? So if you're working with 1 billion rows, what are the expectations around that? And there's tuning you can do, but I think that's kind of where some of that trade-off has to be discussed. And so I think that when we talk about things being too slow, and sometimes they are, and we can tune them, it's important to kind of think about that trade-off. How much data do you really need to look at? For example, who's the audience? Does it need to be real time, or can it be delivered on an hourly basis, a 15-minute basis, that sort of thing? So those are just some of the trade-offs I think that to make.
Thank you. So I think it's been about almost 15 minutes. We didn't say anything about this, so let's ask this guy. What are the possible causes for InterSystems IRIS BI performance issues? And very politely kind of summarized it for me, but I said, can you please summarize it so it can fit in one slide? So it again, very politely summarized it for me, and it did a pretty good job. It has to do with data volumes, with the cube itself, the design. Again, what hardware do you have? Indexing, this is probably more, in our case, on the source table. Do you have the right indices? Obviously, data quality. Using Analyzer, it's pretty easy to see data quality issue because gender shouldn't have 200,000 values. So it floats up the data quality issues pretty fast. And then network, parallel processing. So in terms of some simple math and physics, the more CPUs you have, the more RAM you have, faster disks, faster network, your build going to be faster, right? I mean, there is no surprise there. Terry mentioned global references this morning. So if you can find a way for the engine to do less global references, obviously we'll need to do less work, and it will be faster. And of course, we would like to utilize memory if we can, and we don't want to, going to disk is expensive, so the less we do of that, the better, obviously. And then we have the ability to parallel the work and kind of split the work to different workers and let them do it, in parallel, and obviously things will be faster, right? But if we add economics here, the more of those things we add, the more money it will cost us. So if we can somehow avoid that or lower that, we'll lower the cost and obviously the build time as well. So I could spend a few days probably talking about that, but just briefly, when you compile a cube, we generate a lot of things. So it's a star schema underneath, a few additional tables to hold all the information that you might need for runtime. And so this is just at compile time. When we build, we have we're doing a lot more work. We need to retrieve the information from the source tables. If you have source expressions, you add some logic on top of it. We need to take that into account. And for every row in your source table, if you have 1 billion rows, you need to do it 1 billion times. You need, for every element of your model, you need to actually do some work. So it takes a lot of tuning and a lot of work. We try to simplify it for you. We have Dan Bisix in the audience here. So doing a lot of great work, and we're going to get to some what's next. And this is one of the goals, to make every version we put out there faster and more efficient. So if you want to control a little bit, let's say, the number of CPUs we're using. In this example, we used, you see, 8 workers. That was on my laptop, so not too many CPUs. But I can actually also tell it with this argument, tell it to do it synchronously, so only use 1 CPU. Obviously, the time went up, but if other people or other apps need my resources, then it's a way to limit that. You can also, define that you only want 4, for example, right? So, and we added a few more parameters to be able to separate build time from runtime. So you can say, I want 4 CPUs for my build, but I want 8 CPUs for my runtime. So when people run queries, I want it to be faster. So in terms of a few other kind of tips, right, to make it more efficient, the first thing going to be system configuration. So you already have a system. They gave you, the IT gave you however many CPUs and RAM and things like that. You just want to make sure that IRIS is configured right to take advantage of the resources you have. So global and routine buffers are an obvious one, at least to me. And then we have some global mappings and journaling. This is all sorts of mechanisms to be able to use multiple underlying databases or get things from, and journaling is for disaster recovery. And so every 2 seconds or so, we write things to disk of what globals change and things like that. And then also review how you're getting access to your production data. So you can do it using mirroring, you can do it using ECP, you can use other ETL type things. So that's one category. Another one is to optimize your code. I'm going to go a little faster, but basically you write code to enhance your model, right? So there are a few different ways that we're going to get in the third kind of scenario of how to use it to optimize. And again, that's going to be part of the slide. So this is an interesting one that not a lot of people think about. It's actually building less facts. So you don't really need the billion rows necessarily. So we have all sorts of ways to restrict the number of and add logic to only get the information you need and not get everything. So we tend to always want everything because what if? But again, going back to trying to do it more efficient, those are some tools you can use. On-process fact is, we don't need to get into this, but SQL restrict is a fairly new, couple of years feature, and it lets you add filters to your cube that is not using the cube. It actually goes to the source table. So it's a way, again, in the category of building less facts, because you can then access the source table directly and do some manipulations there. Cube Manager, one of the modules you have in IRIS BI. You can use that. We automate a lot of things. We do some automatic auditing for how fast your cube build was and things like that. And a UI to review your schedule. Selective build is a cool one that for people who are deployed, right? They have users, they cannot just change the model and bring the model down, right? So this is a way to add a specific new level or measure or maybe fix something that you had a typo. And you can do it while the cube is still active. So it's a way to basically make changes to your model without compromising the uptime. This is a common confusion. So people are trying to use pivot tables as listings. So they try to have a lot of cross joins, a lot of layers of putting a lot of data in your pivot table. So a rule of thumb is if your pivot table is more than 1-2 pages, it's probably not great, and you can filter it further to fit in that page. And if you want to see the details, then you go to detail listings, and you have more ways to export that or manipulate it and things like that. And you can use custom queries, basically bring in the listings. When people want to see more data, do the joins or do some other things with the limited number of cohort or things you already filtered in your pivot table. Yeah, so this session is kind of, again, intermediate advanced, right? So I might throw a few terms at you that you're not familiar with, but high level, we let you define your own code and custom actions. From IRIS BI, you can actually communicate back with your application, or you can send emails or add JavaScript or all sorts of things like that to make it more usable and increase adoption. And about collaboration.
Yeah, we got to keep moving.
Collaborate.
Everybody should collaborate.
Yeah. So basically talk to different personas, and it's been very helpful in that area. So the last scenario is just a preview of things. If you're using IRIS BI, you already have it. There are little tricks or tips to add some auditing that you can easily add with a single line of code, and basically have more information to know how people are using your system. So for example, how many of those questions can you answer today? How many?
We should have done a poll for this.
Should have done a poll. So it's very reasonable questions, I agree, right? So I think we should all know the answer to that. And there is some work in the product to kind of float it and make it more available to you. But again, today, if you have it, there are two kind of common things you can audit, hooks basically. I linked the documentation here, and we can obviously talk if you want to learn more about that. But it's basically to audit the dashboard usage of people, or actually every MDX query people run. And we had a customer that needed for compliance or security not only know who ran what, but actually wanted to persist the answer. So there are a lot of hooks and to get it done. DeepSee buttons is a utility that you can run, and there's even a little trick from terminal to pop up your browser, and you're going to get that. So it's nicely organized. It was created for support for us, by us, for us. But you guys can use it as well. This is a system, let's say, that I don't know the system. I ask people to run that. And I can see all the relevant information for IRIS BI. Are there any auditing? What are the resources? And things like that. And again, I'll be around if you want to see a demo or something, or you can just try to run DeepSee buttons during one of the breaks. So in this example, this is one of the internal systems. I enabled auditing, so we have a separate table to how people are using the system, right? So we published an article on developer community. You can take a look at that. But on the left, you're going to see it's called DS2 Audit Query Log, right? So we just included some information about in this table. And every row going to be somebody ran something. So we created a cube on top of it. Like, that's what we do. We create cubes. And then it allows you, for example, to ask really quickly, say, OK, put the cube name on the rows, and I want to see how many times it ran and kind of, why I'm not looking here. What's the average processing time and how many different people ran it and things like that. So you can, just by adding that simple auditing, it kind of gives you insight of how people are using the system, which cubes are the most important one. In this example, we took the same kind of, or not the same, but another auditing, and created a cube on top of that just to know what elements of the cubes people are using. So if you want to make changes or delete a cube, you say, I don't think anyone is using it. So it gives you basically the ability, this is already in the model, so you don't need to write that nice looking code. But you can say, was it a select from clause, or was it detailed listings, a drill through in the BI language. So it also can quickly show you more information about that. This example was about folder items. So IRIS BI saves elements in different folders, and it's logical folders. And in this case, we can actually see what folders people are using. I can see how often they're using it, and it kind of give you more information if you can delete it, you can change it, who should you contact to ask if this can be changed, and things like that. So that was pretty useful as well. The last one is about a Cube Event Monitor. So if you're using the Cube Manager, you want to review some statistics about that, if you have build errors or not. You can download it here, and again, integrate it with your system, or read the article we have in the developer community, which gives you some more information about that. All right, so we're gonna to the most exciting part.
And I think I achieved my goal because you were right on time.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's great. I'm going to actually come down here because we'll go right from this section into Q&A. So if you have questions, you can start to get those ready. So I've learned really two truths since I've been at InterSystems. One, if you want to get an InterSystems developer talking, ask them, can you make this any faster? That works really well. And two, when I talk to customers about what they need, really with almost any business intelligence, reporting, and analytics product, they really want, I'm going to boil this down drastically, but two things. Can you make it faster, and can you make it easier, right? I mean, those are the core things that people look for. So there is one piece of overlap in those two things, and actually you can go to the next slide, and that's where we've been focused really in the last year or so, is working on ways to make InterSystems Business Intelligence faster in terms of both cube building, some work in filtering, as well as in query speed. So there's a number of ways that we've been working on that. With our most recent release, so the release that's generally available now, 23.1, we've done some things with caching to make improvements there. So we're seeing some pretty substantial improvements in some of the internal queries that we've been testing with. And I'm trying to remember, I don't know, Dan, if you remember off the top of your head about, I mean, it was an order of magnitude, I think, faster with some of the queries that we were working with. And then in our next release, so the one after the one that's in preview right now, version 23.3, which will be out in the fall, we're doing some better work with parallel processing. So that should allow you, again, to kind of speed up a lot of the queries that you're seeing there. So as well as some pretty significant work, we've been working with one customer in particular with the way that they do filtering. And so I think you should see some pretty substantial improvements just when you're doing the filter selects on very large cubes. So we've got this customer that we're working with that has a giant cube. And so we've been working with them to really try and make that faster. So I think that's where we've been focused. I think our next challenge is how do we make things simpler? I think every business intelligence tool I've ever worked with has some complication, but I think there's more that we can do there, certainly. So that's really what we're looking at in terms of what we've done fairly recently, as well as what's coming next. So I'm going to leave you with a few pieces of information about where to get more. While you're at Global Summit, I'm going to recommend a few different summit sessions. Our supply chain product actually uses InterSystems IRIS Business Intelligence for some of their visualization. So you can go see that one to hear more about what they're doing with InterSystems IRIS Business Intelligence. HealthShare Health Insight, new and next. Actually, Ben is here. So he's going to have a session tomorrow. And then the developer ecosystem. Asaf mentioned a few things that are available from our developer community. And I'm curious, how many of you actually have used things that you've gotten through the developer community? I'm just curious about that. Has anybody done that? We've got a few. Excellent. How many of you have contributed to the developer community? Have any of those too? Awesome. Thank you for that. So that's a great resource. A great resource. We also have our tech exchange here, and you can always schedule a meeting. Just ask them for what you want to. Go up to the desk in front of the tech exchange and say, "I'd like to meet with somebody about whatever it is that you want to hear about." So those are some great ways to get more information this week. And then when you get home, we've talked a little bit about learning services, classroom training, and the developer community obviously still available there too. So a few different places to go get follow-on information, as well as some of the links that are in here. And I know we covered a lot of ground today. Hopefully everybody can take at least one or two things away from this. And we have about 4 or 5 minutes left if there are any questions that anybody wants to give us.
So I'm going to try to see if we can get, oh, look at that.
Ah, there we go. Ah, there we go. What do we got?
So let's start with the first question, Carmen.
Well, that one's an easy one, of course. Yes, we will share the slides, yep.
So if you go to the Cvent app, you should scroll to this session, or any session. You can scroll down and there's an attachment and you can actually get the PDF. It's actually useful if you have two things you want to go to. So you can review the slides a little bit. Hopefully not big spoilers, alerts for some of the sessions. All right.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, the next one is just the welcome message, yeah. And then, are there APIs to use cubes to drive other UI presentation technologies? There are, yes, there are APIs. Those are all documented on our docs.intersystems.com site. And we have had customers use some of those to build other UIs. We also, in our developer community, have DeepSee Web, which is a UI alternative as well, so that's something that's available.
There's another high charts,
Yep.
another project on Open Exchange
Yep.
that allows you to use the infrastructure you already have in place for IRIS BI, and you can actually add more chart types, animated, and just different types that are not out of the box, and you can easily add that as well. So if you didn't subscribe or join the developer community and you're technical, or just want to read about technology or upcoming things, developer.intersystems.com and community.intersystems.com, I think.
Yep, they're all, you can get to one from the other pretty easily, yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So another
so I think
question
you
kind of similar. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah. You're going.
Did you integrate the columnar indexing already in the product?
Okay.
Yeah. So with columnar, we haven't done anything else to integrate it, but I think that we're looking at a few ideas that we have about how to best use it. We have done one of the early adopter customers was an IRIS BI customer who was using one of the early adopters for columnar was an IRIS BI customer. So we're still trying to work out where the biggest benefit for IRIS BI would be, and I think that's something that we're still pretty actively working on. I think we found a few benefits in that use case with trying to remember if it was filters that he was using for where we found some benefits, but we're still working on some of that.
Yeah, and it's a pretty exciting field because you have the MDX engine, you have columnar, and you're like, wait a second, I can do this better, and this better, and this better. So I think it's a great benefit for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see great things.
Yeah.
That space.
Yeah, it is. It's great to have, because I think what we want to do is try to find the best way that we can do that almost behind the scenes, so that our customers don't have to think about it, right? If we can leverage columnar without you even knowing it, or leverage columnar indices, that's I think something we want to do. So that's something that's active.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My question is how to deal with restrictions in data access due to data privacy issues. For instance, we have the same cube with a lot of information, but the administrative user can count things. For instance, I want to know how many HIV positive cases I have, but the clinical one may be interested in know each patient with this information, but the administrative is not allowed to see the name and data of the patient. How you have different cubes? How you deal with this? I don't know if I could.
It's an excellent question. Yeah.
It's a very good question, and it says 7-6 in my time. But I'll be happy to discuss it with you. So thankfully, the platform has a lot of granularity in terms of granting access to even see the option to see detail listing. Or for user A, you can see the 5 fields. For user B, you can see more. And so it's definitely can be done. And we'll be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is I think you started to give the answer to some extent, right? You can look at separate cubes if that's appropriate, right? So in some cases that makes sense. You want to ensure that there's true segmentation. That might be an option to follow. But yeah, there's also built into the product, there is permissioning as well. So it depends, whether it's field level or, how many different combinations you have of what people can get access to. This is typically there's some discussion and consulting about what might need to be done there. Yeah, but it's a good question. Yeah. We'll take one more and then we'll wrap.
So we have an application where we have access to our tables, which we would like to use fact tables eventually to use analytics.
Sorry, I can barely hear you.
Yeah, so we have an application where we have access and we create our own rows with incoming HL7 feeds.
Okay.
And it would be nice to be able to use analytics to create fact tables and then cubes and so forth. So can you explain this about this methods where you want to update your fact tables manually? They're percent process fact and percent delete fact. I can't find any documentation on that. Let's say we had a trigger on our own table to do something, let the fact table know that I've just updated 100 records or deleted some.
Yeah.
And is that a way for the cube processing to be faster, because you're just only going to process the stuff that's different, therefore it's going to be faster? But I can't find any documentation on these two methods.
Yeah, this is a great question for the WRC for support.
Yeah.
And we can work with you on finding the right way to do it. The on-process fact is different than process fact. The on-process fact is kind of API to add logic, what to add to the cube or what not. And you can also do some manual, you can insert the IDs that you want to, and then the next cube synchronize will pick it up. So there are a few ways to get it done. Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
All right, well,
everyone.
thank you all. Yep.